Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CHP podcast. I am Ariana. I am the CHP Director of Coaching, and I am here today with Alex Viada, the CHP owner of everything. Hi, Alex.
Hi, that's a good title. I like that. I'm going to go with that from now on. But you know,
Owner
everything,
of everything.
everything.
Um, we wanted to hop on today to just kind of talk about stuff. I feel like you and I talk a lot in just life about things, and then we're like, man, that sounded probably important.
Is
Or
that
like,
is that always the joke about why people start podcasts anyway? They're like, man, we should really. I think people want to hear that, and of course, 99% of the time we're mistaken. But I'm going to hope that this is an exception. I think it
yeah.
is. I think it is.
I pray it is
I think
anyway.
so. I think so.
Um, so yeah, we just wanted to hop on and just chat about stuff. I think in particular because of all the cool stuff that's just been happening. I mean, you've been in the middle of, I mean, you're almost at the tail end of writing your book now at this point, right?
Yeah, I've just been saying I'm probably about 2 to 3 weeks from having the initial manuscript finished.
Hmm.
And what I think has been really fun about it, though, is in the process of writing it and rewriting it, I've spent a lot of time, thinking about what I've changed and what's changed in hybrid training, because I think that's been huge.
Yeah. I
Because
mean, it's been a decade since you wrote the first one,
yeah,
and a lot has happened.
and literally before the book came out, the term hybrid didn't even exist in this regard. So it was kind of like, it was a whole new field, and now it's such a big thing. And I think as I'm writing the book, I'm thinking a lot more about like what it means and what it means to people, and all of that.
And I think what's been really cool as well is, in your writing the book, you've also taken on a lot more one-on-one sort of like mentorship and education clients where you've been teaching them really in-depth programming stuff or just sort of answering their more specific questions
Yeah.
in tandem with things like running the hybrid master course again. And I know that those discussions as well kind of either help you, I don't even know what the right, maybe you should say it, but I know that you've told me that like in talking to other people about these concepts or even talking to people about other people's concepts, you're like, "Oh, okay, like,
Yeah.
I'm not crazy," or "This does make sense," or "This
Yeah.
is mirrored elsewhere in the industry," or I don't know, you can talk about
It
it
is because the hardest thing is always once you learn something and once you start to solidify it, how do you explain it? And in the process of explaining it, you have to address all the questions that comes with it. And
Mhm.
I think one of the hardest things to do when writing a book is you're basically writing it in a vacuum. You're not talking to anybody. It's like you're being forced to sit there in a quiet room and come up with stuff that you think is interesting and explain it in a way that people want to hear. And it's such an isolating process. I know that there are a lot of creatives out there, probably people listening to this podcast, like they may do some of their own programming in a vacuum, or they're like, thinking about like Instagram posts they want to put up, and they're trying to think of content in a vacuum, and it's so hard. But I think it's been such a great privilege as part of writing this book to be able to talk to people directly about these things and listen to their questions and have them almost like peer review it and critically ask me like, well, why not this and why that? And I don't know. I think that all of it's been really crucial in helping this book, I think, become something that is actually going to be useful.
Yeah, I know that's been a big focus of yours. I mean, obviously the first one was super, super useful, um, but I know that this one you're already considering calling it something else just because there's so much more
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think maybe one of the biggest things is when you wrote the first one, you didn't expect it to get as big as it did.
Yeah.
It was like a collection of articles, and you just kind of came up with the term hybrid just to give it a name. But at the time, what did you? Why did you think hybrid was the best word to use?
I was on a deadline. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's
That's how all the best decisions are made. I don't.
honestly, I was like, oh my God, I need to think of something to call it. And it was the idea of like not only combination of programs and, the idea that, a hybrid is still recognizable components.
Mhm,
And it's usually in some ways, it's either a little more durable or it's meant to be the best of all possible worlds. It was kind of that idea.
mhm,
Because there are a lot of terms out there like concurrent training, which already has other meanings, and hybrid really emphasized the fact that these are different things, different ideas, different concepts all coming together into one cohesive whole. And I think what I was trying to distinguish between is the fact that if you're a hybrid is still a hybrid. A hybrid isn't. It can be its own new species, but at the end of the day, it's still, you can recognize where it came from. And hybrid training was all about, we're not just creating a new arbitrary kind of athlete here. A hybrid can be anything. A hybrid can be anyone who does these different disciplines and recognizes each of these disciplines, competes in each of these disciplines as a separate discipline, but brings all of this mastery together into one athlete. And that was always kind of the critical concept behind it, was it doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter what these 2 disciplines are, 3 disciplines or 4 disciplines or anything. What you're doing is you're taking the requisite components out of each, and you're realizing that you're not pulling all those playing fields and making a new one. You're still in all those separate playing fields. You're just preparing for all of them at once. And I think that's always been the crucial part of it.
I think that's an interesting way to articulate it too, because I think that circles back to some other stuff that us as people, we've discussed, and about hybrid as a term now being used to like basically encompass any competition that has like lifting and running,
Yeah.
and how they are not always equal or even,
Yeah.
or actually participating completely in both disciplines. We can touch on that in a second, but I know that in the past you've defined hybrid as working on 2 opposite or non-complementary disciplines
Yeah.
at the same time and making progress in both. And I think that's an important distinction, because there's a lot of if we're going to take hybrid and make it a thing, we have to also be clear about it. It's not multi-sport.
Yes.
It's not concurrent. It's something else, because you could be doing multiple sports and all of them could be endurance sports.
Yeah.
One of them could be kind of like at the ragged edges of strength, where strength becomes endurance. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what sport that would be, but like you could be doing multiple sports, but they're all going to be endurance. Or you could be doing multiple strength sports, but they're not going to be requiring very much of you on the endurance side. And I think the way that you articulated that, keeping each discipline and participating in each discipline separately, but at the same time, kind of, to me at least, makes that visual of a hybrid athlete participating in strength sport and endurance sport at the same time a little bit more clear, because I feel like hybrid, it's sort of like any combination of the 2 ever,
Right.
even if there's like this much endurance.
Right. And that was always the joke, is that like if you're just running and lifting, are you a hybrid athlete? It's like, no, you're just exercising. That's what exercise should be.
Strength and conditioning. I mean, it's S&C. It's in every,
I,
yeah.
I remember really, really early on in hybrid training, I worked with Spencer Nadolski.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know when we were talking about programming and everything else, at one point he said, I really like the fact that this is like a great program for health. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, if he happens to listen to this, but I remember having a conversation with him about saying, well, yeah, this is like how people should train. You want to be lifting, you want to be doing cardio and all that, and it's a great framework. But the entire idea of like a hybrid athlete, you can use hybrid principles for regular training and not need to call yourself a hybrid athlete. You can use that to just lift and run because you want to do both. But the true idea, the true test of being a hybrid athlete was realizing how it's supposed to open doors to you. It's supposed to tell people who, I don't care what background you come from. I don't care if you're a 350-pound strongman athlete, you decide you want to be a cyclist too, because you just want to get out on a mountain bike and have some fun. You can do that. Sign up for a bike race. It's not off limits to you. You're a runner. You've been a runner all your life, and you decided you want to know what it's like to be strong, but you still love running, and you decide you want to test yourself against some other people in the strength arena. You can do that. So the whole idea of hybrid training was supposed to say, like, yeah, this is not a compromise, really. It's not giving up what you're good at to then be okay at something else. It's anything.
Talk about it.
What's that?
As in we joke about it.
We joke about it, but at the end of the day, you're still trying to be the best you can in any playing field you put your foot into. And I think
Yeah.
that's what that does is it says, don't let yourself get caught up into this whole idea that if you're a hybrid athlete, you need to do this and this, or you
Mhm.
need to hit this certain standard in this. Because I think one of the areas that I know I've struggled with, and I know I've articulated, we've had some good conversations on this, is people who come from one sport background don't necessarily know how deep the well goes in other sports.
Yeah.
If you come from an endurance background, you may not necessarily know what the human body is capable of in strength sport, or even what you're capable of in strength sport.
Mhm. Yeah.
And finding a series of competitions that really tests and allows people to reach their true potential in each is very rare. Because I
Mhm.
think a lot of tests right now and a lot of challenges people come up with are very much tailored to what they think they're already good at.
Mhm. And I think that a lot of strength athletes are like, why would I run? So you just have a lot of endurance athletes who are lifting, who are
Yeah,
like, I'm going to come up with this challenge
yeah,
that totally plays to my strengths as an ex endurance athlete or a current endurance athlete.
right,
You've got all these sports popping up,
yeah,
and even events that are cropping up where they say that they're hybrid, but I would argue that any strength athlete would look at those workouts and be like, there's nothing for me here.
yeah. There's no benefit. My strength, all my expertise in this area, and all my proficiency in this area is not giving me any notable points here in this event. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, all this is rewarding is people who are faster. And
Yeah.
the minimum
Or
of a
can
high
move a
level,
lightweight faster,
yeah,
or can recover better between very short intervals, which still requires mostly cardio.
right,
Yeah, there's uh you and I have discussed this at length. I think we'll push into this later, but I think it might be worthwhile to bring up athletes that we think do this really well.
yeah,
I think definitely one of them that you and I obviously has won the Crucible twice, Sam Spinelli, because he does strongman,
yeah,
powerlifting, and now he's training for a triathlon, an Ironman triathlon.
yeah,
Man runs, 30 miles and a go. Um,
yep,
just what was how long was his swim? I don't want to say a distance that was shorter than it was, but it was like an extremely long open water swim.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he's brilliant because I mean he's extremely strong, extremely proficient in strength sport, Olympic lifting, strongman, all of it, and also is a spectacular endurance athlete.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's that willingness to also demonstrate what you're capable of in each
yeah,
sport. And it's not, this is not a case where somebody like Sam would ever sandbag on, what he's capable of because it's good enough for what he wants to do. It always looked to me, I mean, and another guy I know you and I talk about a lot, but Jack Driscoll,
yeah, I love Jack. Yeah,
unbelievably talented athlete. But what I really love about a lot of his training, and both these guys, and I know there are others we can talk about too, but it's that they're to them it almost seems like they're never content with saying, okay, I'm impressive enough here. Let me see what I like. Let me focus on something else. It's just the all around performance, and more importantly than that, the willingness to take on new challenges in the opposite realm, to
yeah,
sign up for an ultra marathon, to sign up for a triathlon, to really push limits on powerlifting, all of those things. Um, you know, another guy I really love. Eric the Electric, Eric Lampkin.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and he's known for competitive eating, but the guy decides to do a powerlifting meet, and just then afterwards goes for his run of the week, which was a 20-mile run at a 7:30 pace. Like
Hmm.
these are just individuals who just sort of embody the idea of excellence in everything they try. And I think that's kind of what I really love in the hybrid
Hmm.
space is these athletes who are thinking, let me see what I'm just capable of. You know, Eric decided he would sign up for a powerlifting meet.
Hmm.
He will he had a shoulder injury. He wasn't feeling his greatest, but he said, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do it because
And put himself in that sport.
I
Yeah.
want to stand next to people who live and breathe this sport. And
Mhm.
I want to show them that not only do I belong standing right next to them, no matter what I think of myself, but I want to show that I can compete with them. And that's the beauty of it. It's saying, throw yourself into these new sports, compete in these new sports, get to know these athletes. All of them can teach you different things. People who come from different sports can teach you different things about their approach to training, what they value in training. Like there's so much to learn by enveloping yourself in that new sport that might be totally different than your own. That part of that to me is what hybrid training has been so much about.
Yeah. I think there's so much to competing in a sport, any sport, even if you're like, I'm not going to win or whatever your excuse might be. There's so much to putting yourself in an environment where you're surrounded by people who are better at the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
That is so inspiring.
Yeah.
Because if you're just functioning within your own little bubble and you're like, okay, this is the best I'm ever going to do. And then you go to a powerlifting meet and you see someone that weighs 50 pounds less than you, lifting 200 pounds
Yeah.
more than you.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're like, okay, maybe I haven't given this enough time.
Exactly.
Maybe I do have 50 more pounds in me. Maybe I
Right.
do have a little bit more that I can do here. I just haven't given this enough time or enough of my energy or enough of my interest. And maybe you don't want to, but I think generally the types of individuals that get into hybrid sport, I mean, we're excited by challenges. We're excited by being bad at things.
Yeah.
Like we're all demented, but it being bad at something or seeing that there's room to grow makes us excited. And I think there's no better place for that than, like you said, shoulder to shoulder with athletes that live and breathe that sport,
Exactly.
um, rather than from the sidelines or only hanging out with people that also don't do those things.
Right. And it's a little bit like, as thinking back to ages ago, I used to think about like, well, what is the ultimate hybrid sport? And people would say, well, how about something like decathlon? But decathlon isn't hybrid sport. Decathlon's decathlon.
Yeah.
You need a certain set of proficiencies to optimize your performance in a decathlon. You're not going to get an extreme physical specimen who just absolutely demolishes one of those disciplines who's also a good decathlete. Like a good decathlete, but simultaneously, a world class decathlete is going to learn from world class coaches and world class influences in each one. They know that, most of them, it's funny because the best decathletes in the world would probably get crushed in each individual event by a really, really talented, D1 college athlete or even a high school athlete in some cases. But that doesn't mean that they don't need to hold themselves to that high standard and learn everything they can about their sport and even sometimes compete against specialists in these sports to learn what they're capable of. So decathlon isn't necessarily hybrid because it's its own sport, but at the same time the people who are really good at it are not resting on their laurels because they think they're the best decathlete. They want to see what they're capable of in any given sport so that they can win overall.
Yeah. What would you say would be some hybrid combinations, like outside of the lifting and running bubble, um, or like lifting and cycling? If you could think of something else that you could categorize as being actually hybrid,
Sprinting and distance running,
because they're just like totally opposite.
totally opposite. I mean, totally opposite in terms of training, discipline. Like there's some overlap, but you'll never see these two individuals. You'll never see a sprinter and a 10K runner training the same way. Very different training emphasis. One is absolutely a speed and power sport. The other is absolutely endurance, all about threshold sport. So I think these are two different things that people don't normally think of that as like being hybrid. But if you're a sprinter and you want to start running distance as well, that's absolutely hybrid training.
Yeah.
Um,
I think again, like to bring up Jack, only because I know his numbers because he just recently did this, but he ran like a 520 mile on like random roads, right?
yeah,
Like, but he also had just done a 50-mile ultra.
yeah,
And it's just kind of like that to me I just find so impressive is that he's maintaining his speed and his power
yep.
while also training for things like a triathlon or ultra endurance or multiple day fitness competition or similar. um,
And I
I just
think
think that is so impressive.
And I think a big part of that, and I don't want to, obviously, can't speak for him, but I think a big part of that is the hunger to constantly want to excel in what you do and not just do something that sounds cool.
Yeah.
It's again, I feel like these are individuals who don't rest on their laurels. They don't say, oh, well, that's good enough. Yeah, I don't think I could do much better than that. They go, no, I'm just going to be the best I can possibly be. I love
Mhm.
that.
Who else? Kazdan Ikahara.
Yeah.
He I mean, I know that when he did the Crucible, his 6-hour run was actually part of a nearly 12-hour ultra marathon.
Yeah.
He just like clipped 6 hours from it because
Yeah.
he's insane. His deadlift is well over 600 pounds.
Yep.
Insanely powerful.
Yeah.
Um, just insane athlete all around. And he's just so quiet. And like you wouldn't even know he existed unless you know he exists.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and he's just another one where he's just a workhorse.
And
He doesn't talk about it. He's just dark horse in the corner, just doing his own thing. But like you saw, he like competed in some strongman competition and like won it or something. Or
I think at the end of the day, there's this joy of the sport. There's this joy
yeah,
in the sports. And I think that's what, anyone listening to this back and forth, I think that's kind of what I want to convey is you've got to find things that you love and feel like you can get excited about and throw yourself into. And I think that's where
and
a
suck
big,
at
what's that?
and suck at
Yeah. Yeah.
long
Because,
enough to get really good at it.
yeah, exactly. Because there's no arbitrary standard you've got to hit. If you want to be a
Mhm.
hybrid athlete and the fastest you can run is a 13-minute mile, and all you've done all your life is strength sport, you're still a hybrid athlete.
Yeah,
You
I would
really are.
argue like you're more hybrid if you have no running experience whatsoever.
Yeah.
And you're trying to run. I feel like you embody hybrid, or if you're a runner and you've never had a barbell on your back, like you in that moment
I've
are
always said,
the most
I've always
hybrid.
said one of the most hybrid sports inherently is strongman because
Yeah,
there is no one perfect profile. Yeah, okay, maybe at the world's strongest man levels, the weights get so heavy that you need pretty much a certain minimum level. But for a lot of people, and a lot of people who compete in like, more local shows, the lightweight or middleweight level, especially, like you it doesn't matter what background you come from. You're probably going to be really good at some things. You're probably going to be really bad at other things. You don't know what's going to show up. You need to just commit yourself to developing every single aspect of athleticism you can possibly think of to have a
mhm,
hope of winning at a show. And if you hyper specialize, you might guarantee yourself a win in one area. That might be all you need to come out ahead. If you just settle for being pretty good at most, you may win a show like that. You may not. But it's that whole kind of thing. Like try a whole bunch of different things, throw yourself into everything, and not all these things are going to support each other.
yeah. Um, I think too, what's been interesting is seeing the word hybrid, just being used all the time everywhere. And even seeing some of the backlash to it where people are just like, oh my God, it's hybrid athletes again. Ah, it's hybrid athletes again. And I think it's almost sad because it's such a buzzword now.
Yeah,
And I don't know entirely how to self-correct me besides writing a book about it. Um, but it's just sad that I think unfortunately like a few popular internet people, and like no one in particular, this isn't even a bad thing, but in trying to get attention for the things that they do and doing things in the way that they do where they film it and they post it and they talk about how cool they are and they talk about how hybrid they are and they talk about how strong they are. um, they have a ton of TikTok followers or whatever, and it's working for them, but it's also unfortunately creating this idea that like you have to think you're a badass, or
yeah,
like you have to be really lead, or you have to be really buff, or you have to look a certain way, or I do think a lot of these guys come from like strength or bodybuilding backgrounds. They have a ton of lean mass, and then they go into running and they have an aptitude for it, or cycling or something like that. Um, and it's almost unfortunate because I wish that we would get more lenses and more eyes on the people who just are doing multiple different sports like you and I have described, having a blast, doing awesome, um, and just being normal people.
yeah.
Like,
And it's funny because I think a lot of the hybrid label is so tempting for a lot of people because otherwise, what is a person who is in has a good physique but not a bodybuilder physique, is
yeah,
a good runner but isn't winning all their races, can lift a good amount but
can't
may
win
not
anything.
may not win even a local meet, but who's pretty good at a lot of stuff and trains hard. What else do
Yeah,
they call themselves, or how else do they pitch themselves? And I think it's almost like a search for identity. And I think a lot of people like the idea that, and the one thing I appreciate about the hybrid movement is it's at least made people recognize that, hey, being pretty good at a lot of things is actually pretty cool.
yeah,
And it's cool if you can lift a lot and to still like go for a run. Like that's actually a cool thing to do because it didn't used to be. A lot of the backlash is from people who were saying things like, "Oh, well, I always trained like this," and I want to be like, "No, you didn't.
Yeah,
No,
right.
you
You
didn't.
never trained this hard.
I was there. Okay,
Yeah.
I was there 25 years ago in the fitness industry, and nobody was doing this. Trust
Yeah.
me, you didn't train like this."
Yeah.
So I think, but the fact that that's like ugh, normalized is cool. But at the same time, like you see why there's a backlash. You see why people are like, "Oh man, everyone's hybrid nowadays."
And you're like,
Like,
shut up.
shh. Yeah. So
It's hard because it's like you want to open the doors and be like, look, any of you can be a part of this.
yeah,
Like a lot of you already are.
yeah,
Um, but then at the same time, in order to have a term, it needs to be defined, and therefore you need to be able to say what it is not.
yeah,
And it's like, how do you do that without being like, well, sorry, you actually aren't hybrid. Like, how do you do
yeah.
that?
I think there is one thing I definitely want to say though, and I think one big thing is, the one thing I always say is like, nobody cares.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is, a lot of that was born from people who, they're worried. First of all, like nobody cares what you do in your training. Nobody's really watching you. Even though you update everybody on what you're doing, nobody really cares. They don't really know what it is. You don't have to apologize to your followers if you underperform in a race because nobody really cares. You do it for yourself. You do it because all people want to see is that you're happy and that you're accomplished. If you are brand new, if you are a lifelong endurance runner and you want to like do a powerlifting meet, if you show up and you think, "Oh my God, I'm not lifting any of the weights these people are," nobody cares. I've
They're happy
never
you're there.
been at a powerlifting meet and seen somebody open up with super lightweight and had anybody say anything negative. Ever,
Yeah.
ever. I've never, you go to a local, 5K or marathon. As long as you get the cutoffs, nobody cares when you come in.
Hmm.
It's one of those things where I think I want to encourage people to actually go out and actually try those sports that they're dipping into
Yeah.
because no one is judging you for not being at a certain level yet. And
Yeah.
they may not know what you're capable of in the other arena
Yeah.
because they have no frame of reference for it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. I think that really helps in trying to bring people into the idea of at least using some hybrid principles. At least if you're a strength athlete, please do some cardio for your heart.
mhm,
Like if you're an endurance athlete and you're a runner and you're nearing the age of 35 or 40, maybe consider adding some resistance training.
yeah,
Um, there's benefits to both, and you don't have to be a hybrid athlete to dabble in both.
yeah,
Um, but you also can call yourself a hybrid athlete if you are dabbling in both and want to progress in both,
yeah,
and that's perfectly fine.
yeah,
Um, you don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to do a certain sport. You don't have to compete. And the one thing I want to clarify is you and I are encouraging competing not to win, but simply to be around other people and to
exactly.
watch other people participate. Because I think one of the unfortunate things that I've found, at least, um, and a lot of other people have expressed to me, at least through the Crucible and the like, is that hybrid training is really lonely
Yeah,
because you might have runner friends, but unless you're very good, you probably can't run their paces, or maybe you can, but they have zero interest in your other hobbies.
yeah,
They have no interest in your hobbies. Like they have their own world that they live in, and you could visit it, but they're not gonna live your life with you. They're not gonna be next to you when you do your strength sport, and you're gonna hang out with powerlifters, and they're gonna be like, "You're crazy
yeah.
running. How could you? That's so weird." And sometimes it can feel really lonely. So I also think it's important to just put yourself out there, hang out with people, engage with people who are in that sport, and just talk about what you're doing.
And sometimes there is something so nice when you have, let's say you've been in one sport most of your life and you speak the language and you know all the people in it and then you throw yourself into a new sport. You get to nerd out about it a little bit, like you get
Yeah.
into cycling and suddenly you're like really into all the technology. It's like, and none of your colleagues know about it because, they're not too into it. And then you show up to a bike race and you have a casual conversation with somebody else in the starting corral and you can just nerd out with them on bike stuff, and you're like, wow, oh my God, there are people out there, they don't care that you're not originally from cycling. They don't care that you've been doing another sport for 20 years. They don't care
They don't
about
even
any of
care
that.
what kind of bike you own.
All they see is another cyclist. All they see is somebody else to share this with. And it is such a good way to open your community and open your eyes and get you into new sports. And that's because that's why we do a lot of this anyway. We get into new sports because we like the different challenges. We like learning new things, different mindsets. And I think people got to really embrace that a lot more. Like, don't just do hybrid challenges on your own. Go
Yeah.
out, do those sports, throw yourself into it, and you'll find entire communities out there that welcome you with open arms.
Hmm. And you might find that you have a phenomenal aptitude for that particular sport
Yeah,
or that particular style of race. Because, I mean, you can be a lifelong strength athlete and then realize that you have exactly the right mentality to excel at 10K races or crit racing,
yeah,
on the bike,
yeah,
or something else completely different, cross country skiing or whatever it is. Like,
yeah,
maybe you're actually more inclined to be better at this other sport just because of the way that you think or the way that you process things or whatever. Like, you don't know unless you try.
yeah. And it's really, really liberating the more you start doing these things and the less you care
Hmm.
how it's perceived. And like I said, that was really what got me into this so much. Even when I first started, was honestly just going to my first 5K and then going to my first marathon and just having that completely different atmosphere and saying, "Wow, this is something other people always did." And
Hmm.
now I'm like, I'm a part of it. I'm a
Yeah.
runner. I wasn't a very good runner at the time, but I was like, I'm a runner. I don't care. I'm out here. I'm doing this. These are
Yeah.
all new people. Like, this is it's a whole new hobby that there are people just itching to share with me. I'm going to do this and I'm going to have fun with
I think when you're the kind of person, again, I think there's a certain style of personality that's attracted to being very good at two different sports and the whole hybrid thing. And I think that, and this isn't to speak for all of us, but a lot of us tend to be sort of completionists. We tend to be perfectionists. We tend to look at the goal and be like, I need to obtain X or else I am not good enough.
it.
And then you go run a 5K and you're like watching the grannies at the start line chatting, and they run the whole thing and they have a blast and they're smiling and they get their medal and they're like hanging out with their friends and they go get breakfast after. And you were there like, oh my God, I need to get X time on the thing so that I can, prove myself as a runner. And you've got so much stress about it.
Yeah.
And you kind of look around at all the other people you're running with and you're like, wait, I think this could be fun too.
Yeah.
I kind of need to like recenter myself in the fact that this is a hobby and people do it for fun and get great joy out of it. And I could also do that
Yeah.
if I turned down the pressure on myself for half a minute
Yeah.
and just let myself run.
Yeah. Just enjoy it. Just let yourself engage in the process of mastery, but not get so obsessed with the end. Because hybrid training is the ultimate in process orientation, is really
Right.
all it is. And, even the way I coach is all process oriented. It's not, okay, they need to hit this thing, this target at this point. It's
Yeah.
going, we're just going to push you each day and each week to the limits of what you're comfortable doing on the week and what you can recover from. And we're going to see how far you can get.
Yeah.
And
And just keep pushing.
that's the enjoyment. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and I think all of this comes back to wanting the whole hybrid idea to be both more all encompassing than it is right now, but also a little more specific at the same time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not trying to gatekeep hybrid and being like, oh no, these people are hybrid, because that's not true at all. But it's just saying, hey, let's widen the description to really encompass what it is and let people feel good about trying new things and trying new sports and throwing themselves into it and not feeling like there's some standard they need to hit. The best hybrid
Yeah.
athlete out there doesn't exist. Who's a better hybrid athlete? Someone with an 800-pound deadlift who can run a 10-minute mile, or somebody with a 400-pound deadlift who can run a 5-minute mile or 4-minute mile?
Does it matter?
Does it matter? They're both
Yeah.
so incredibly good at different things, and they're both like,
Yeah.
which one's a better hybrid athlete? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's difficult too because I think in it being undefined, it's very easy to ascribe again a sort of image with a hybrid athlete, or a certain aptitude with being a hybrid athlete, and like nothing's further from the truth.
Yeah.
Like you could be, at 56 and deciding for the first time that you want to do both lifting and running, not only for the health benefits, but because you want to try and get, a 300-pound deadlift by your 60th birthday,
Yeah.
and you also want to be able to run a 5K.
Mhm.
That's so valid. You are a hybrid athlete. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't, I think that's been the one thing that's kind of, I don't want to say been frustrating me, but it does get frustrating when you have these hybrid sports popping up, and I say hybrid in quotations. um, these hybrid events that happen that reward a very specific type of athlete, um, and they reward an athlete who can endure certain words, a certain amount of work and have a certain work capacity, but they're not necessarily hybrid. And so you're kind of left with these ideas now of, oh, I in order to be a hybrid athlete, I need to run 50 miles a week. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You no,
Yeah.
no, I promise you don't. Like, you just run as far as you can
Yeah.
every week.
Yeah.
That will get you safely to wherever your goal is, even if it's just slow improvement. So if that's 3 miles, that's 3 miles. Like,
Yeah.
that's being a hybrid athlete.
Yeah.
Competing in a sport, maybe you need to run a certain amount per week, um, but it is kind of tough too. I think now with all these hybrid events propping up, that I mean they're largely endurance events. They reward runners.
Yeah.
Um, and you and I had a conversation about this pretty recently, where like running is such an accessible sport, but it's not only accessible. Like, when you're running, you can look next to you and see how much faster someone is than you.
Yeah.
And you can be like, wow, I could get faster. Or like, you look over and like there's someone who you saw on the start line and you were like, I'll blow by them. And then they beat your ass. They beat you so hard. It's just some person and you were like, they don't look like anything special. And then they run so much faster than you. And you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm a fool. But in strength sport, if you can't lift something, you have no idea.
Yeah.
You can watch someone lift it all you want,
I have
but
no
you have
concept.
no idea. At least you could sprint a 5-minute mile pace for 10 seconds and be like, oh my gosh, that is intense. That is intense.
Yeah.
How does someone run a marathon at this pace? If you loaded up your barbell, I couldn't lift it. And I couldn't lift it the same way that I couldn't lift a barbell at 400 pounds right now.
It's,
Like, 400 and 700 are equally immovable.
yeah, it is. It's hard to have a frame of reference. It's hard to say, like, okay, what is attainable? Like, what is a good incremental improvement for me? What am I capable of? I've never touched that before. What can I even do? And like, again, it's harder to reward incremental improvements in strength sport in a lot of events that aren't just let's see who has the biggest total.
Yeah. And I think too, strength sport's way more niche. It's way more, it requires so much more specific equipment, so much more specific training.
Yeah.
Um, Not that running doesn't require specific training, but like, you need a barbell, you need plates, or
Yeah.
you need strongman equipment, you need an atlas stone, you need something. Um, and I think that a lot of athletes that are coming to hybrid sport now are coming out of the sort of OCR or bike racing or running, but did some strength training background. Um, and they're creating these sports that just really reward really good runners.
Yeah.
And you could be strong as an ox and it will not help you.
you know, I think the one caveat I want to throw in here, because I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, is
Yeah.
that single sport training or being a really good runner or switching sports. I went from lifting to running. I'm still jacked. I'm a runner now. You can't say I'm not hybrid. You're not hybrid. That doesn't mean that you don't train hard. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
you're not an amazing athlete. You
Yeah.
can train harder and be a better athlete than any hybrid athlete out there if you're a single sport athlete. Like,
Hmm.
it's more a case of, it's not a, we're not trying to say, well, you haven't earned this. It's really just saying, like, it's a different thing. It's a different concept.
Yeah, you're incredible,
Yeah.
and I think you're amazing.
Yeah.
I also don't think that you're hybrid,
Yeah.
but, like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, it's I think one of the things that stuck out to me, is I've done a couple, like, quote, unquote, "hybrid events," and, when I did them not now, but when I did them, I wasn't a shabby runner, but I was definitely coming off of a much more strength intensive
Yeah.
period, because of injury, and, like, the women's deadlift weight, was 165.
Yeah. Your 400-pound plus deadlift didn't do you any good there.
No, and it was in the middle of an endurance event.
Yeah.
I had to do the, air bike right before it,
Yeah.
and then right after it, I had to get on a rower.
Yeah.
So, like, there was absolutely no benefit to me for being that strong,
So
and, like
as a challenge to anyone listening to this who happens to be any kind of like race or event organizer, the challenge is to design a hybrid type event that actually has at least one event that rewards true limit strength.
and put it at the start of the event,
Yeah, not after,
not
not at
after
the end
you
of the
make the
day. Or,
runner.
yeah,
Yeah, not after you make your strength athlete run 7 miles of trails,
right.
and then you're like, "Okay, now lift the thing." Like,
Yeah, let's see
yeah,
you do it now. No, and I think part of that is though, like let strength athletes have a chance to shine. Give everyone a chance to shine.
yeah,
And I think you'll see
that's
a lot of
hybrid.
cool stuff there, and I think you'll see a lot more athletes from different backgrounds getting excited about hybrid type stuff if you
And
show
yeah,
them everything else that's in it.
right, right. Because I think there's always this sort of like, well, odd objects are more functional, and therefore you're a better athlete if you could, like, no,
No,
you just can't get a hold of enough barbells and plates to run your competition.
yeah,
Just say it.
just say it.
Easier to
Just
get
say it.
sandbags. Like,
Yeah,
just say it.
yeah,
Um, or, you've got these athletes coming in that are more mixed OCR type athletes, and they don't do barbell sport, and you want them to compete. So you say no barbells.
yeah.
But a bunch of other people see that and they go,
Huh. Oh, there goes that. There goes all my background. Well, and it's
yeah,
also like it's okay to have some athletes who are very good athletes in other ways be like, oh, I can't lift that.
yeah,
Fine,
okay,
it's fine.
cool.
Yeah.
And the person who didn't want to run 13 miles ran it anyway.
And again,
So, like, stand in front of that weight and stare at
yeah, I
it. Like,
always come back to this because I people think that like I have some weird love for strongman, but I really do because every now and then you'll get some event where you get somebody who's just a beast in all the carry medleys, and they can just move that shit back and forth, and they're, and then they get to like the deadlift ladder, and they get to the last one, they just go nope. Yeah, and there's something cool about that. You're like, all right,
yeah,
peace out. I'm cutting my losses. The person with
yeah,
a really big deadlift is like, okay, this is my chance to get some points here. I'm gonna go pull something no one else can pull because
yeah,
I know that I'm going to be, like, an asthmatic rhinoceros. Actually, rhinos can run pretty fast on the carry medleys, and that's not going to go like I'm going to zero out that event. So
yeah.
it's like I said, you give athletes the chance to show what they can do, and also the chance to fail and be like, that's okay.
I think it's interesting too, and I think it's because I'm just much more like 2 feet into the whole like hybrid mixed event space right now. But like, there's been a huge push in the last, I want to say 3 or 4 years, of militarizing, maybe because of sponsors,
Mhm.
these hybrid events where it becomes about grit, and it becomes about, what can you survive. And to me, I think that's really cool, but to me it also takes away from the actual athleticism of the event,
Mhm. Yeah,
because you've brutalized these athletes.
yeah,
You've put them in situations where they can't actually perform at their best, which, you know what, if you're trying to imitate selection, or you're trying to pull the best out of them in, a certain set of difficult conditions, or have them prove themselves, that's its own thing, and you
right,
can totally do that. But a lot and or all of the events have been going in that direction in a
right,
very strange way to me, because it's like you have this wide field of maybe 40 male athletes, 40 female athletes, or 20 female athletes, 20 male athletes, or even just 8, but they're mixed specialists. But you're exposing them all to identical stress
hmm
in a way that basically means that the only thing left to them, because all their power is gone, they're exhausted, their strength is gone. Obviously, you have a higher strength base, you're still better off. But like, you're brutalizing them with long endurance events, you're brutalizing them with long swims, you're brutalizing them with low calories, low sleep. I would love to see an event that was like, no, get your rest.
Yeah.
Tomorrow you're gonna lift as much as you can,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna run as fast as you can, and
Yeah.
we're gonna see who wins.
Yeah.
Like, but not in that sort of like, we're gonna beat you up and act like, no.
Yeah.
I want you well rested
And like,
because you're gonna
hey,
kick your own ass tomorrow, and
yeah,
it's up to you. It's up to you.
yeah, and like, hey, those events are cool. Like, don't get me wrong, they're awesome.
Yeah,
They're
they're
brutal.
very awesome.
They're
They're their
awesome.
own thing,
They
and that's
all
like
are own
all
thing.
of them now.
It's all exactly. It's kind of like, hey, no hate to the people doing those events because some of them are fantastic.
I want to do one. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I
they're
know.
cool.
Right.
They're cool, but
But
also,
also, hey guys, let's try to have something that actually lets athletes show what they're capable of. Because I think there's a beauty to all that right now that's getting left out, and we wanna show people that they can demonstrate what they're actually capable of.
yeah, and be rewarded for it, and be given a safe environment to do so.
Yeah,
As I think a lot of athletes have to make that choice, even if they are very strong or if they are very fast and durable. They're in those multi-event multi-day events. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but they have to make the decision to sandbag to
yeah,
survive. They have to make the decision. They have to go, all right, my best may put me in peril for later events, or I might be too fatigued to perform at my best if I do XYZ. So I have to, like, they're being forced to make sacrifices and make these choices, which again is part of competition. I would just love to see a competition built to give these athletes the slickest runway. Like,
yeah,
all right, man, like, let's go. I don't know, like, I just want to see that happen. Um,
yeah.
because like, there's just so many nasty people out there that exist that can just do so much cool stuff. Um, and I unfortunately see this trend continuing where it sort of becomes this kind of like, can you survive the 3 days?
Yeah, yeah,
But I want to see them run fast.
yeah, exactly.
What about us over here? I just want to see them lift things and run
Yourself
fast.
building your potentials, and again, hey, at the end of the day, I appreciate that the whole idea is, well, hybrid is well rounded. Honestly, hybrid isn't well rounded, not necessarily. Hybrid
No.
is different things. Hybrid is being able to walk onto several different playing fields and play the game. That's
Mhm.
hybrid.
Not all the playing fields, but
No,
at
it
least
doesn't have
some.
to be every single one. It doesn't have to be the same playing fields. It could be two different playing fields than anybody else. That's still hybrid. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think that's kind of what, when you and I were talking about this, I think what we kind of wanted to get across was, let's open up this definition a little bit and really remember that this is about trying new things and trying different things and not having to compromise on what you're good at or minimize yourself or lower your own personal standards in what you're already good at to meet
Mhm.
what you think is some arbitrary vision of what a hybrid athlete should be.
Yeah. Or, I mean, just doing two things you don't particularly enjoy
Yeah,
because you think that's the only way that you're going to get either attention
yeah,
or be able to participate in hybrid sport. Like, please no.
yeah,
Do what you enjoy. This is about the spirit of inquiry. This is about being bad at stuff. This is about figuring out that you were good at stuff that you never tried before.
exactly.
Just one big playing field. And I think the athletes that are the best at it, we only mentioned a couple, but like those athletes seem to have the best time.
Yeah,
And I think that again comes up over and over and over again. It's the ones that are truly enjoying themselves rather than trying to throw themselves into a wall,
yeah,
for either recognition or to obtain some sort of fixed target. But
I agree.
yeah, I don't know. We could probably talk about this stuff for forever, but
Yeah,
hybrid, it's for everybody, but it isn't everything.
yeah, exactly. So that's it. Have fun, continue to do what you're doing, and if you find something you love, throw yourself into it. Sign up for a race, sign up for an event, join a run club, join a powerlifting gym, join a strongman gym that has strongman practice on Saturdays. Throw yourself into the new world, meet new people, experience what it's like to be brand new to something and have nobody judge you for it, and just want you to get better. It's a beautiful thing. Go do it.
Yep.
Cool.
I have nothing to add.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. And, to all the listeners, if you guys have additional questions or if you have additional topics that you want to hear us talk about, because I would like to have Alex on more often. And if it's not me, it'll be someone else. But if you have anything that you want us to talk about or want to get our perspectives on or questions that you want answered, please use the comment section. Please use um, DMs on Instagram. Let us know what you want to hear from us about. If you need any clarification, anything like that. I think we're entering an age where communication and talking about these ideas will help both open doors and also refine the approaches to them. So I think, in doing that, please, converse with us.
Yeah. That's what we're here for.
We're not just talking to each other. We want to talk to you.
Cool.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, bye.
All right. Thanks, Alex. Bye.
You.